Hello and welcome. So let's just jump right into it. You're hearing this video because maybe you're a permanent resident of Canada, or you come to Canada and you want to know what to do with your driver's license, how to get your driver's license. First of all, the process is different for the different provinces in Canada. So depending on whether you're going to Ontario, depending on when you're going to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, the processes are different, and the class of license, they have different names. So for example, in Alberta, in the province that we came to Edmonton. In Alberta, what you switch into is a class 5. So there is two types of class 5. There is a class 5 non-GDL and there is a class 5 GDL. The class 5 GDL the GDL stands for Graduated Driver's License. So the steps for a normal Canadian, a citizen, or somebody who grew up here, when they turn 16, they will usually get a learner's permit. In order to get the learner's permit, they first of all have to do a knowledge test. So they will do a theory exam, on all the road signs and everything, and then they will be issued a learner's permit, right? That's called a class 7. So the class 7 is restricted in that you need to drive in the presence of an adult who has a class 5 non-GDL, a class 5 license, at least for about 3 years or something like that, with 3 years of driving experience. And so you do that. And then they actually, after a time, the next stage is that they move on to a class 5 GDL. The class 5 GDL is the graduated learners graduated driver's license, right? So it's like they've moved from learners to this next step. So, and they will have it for about 2 years when they now qualify to get the actual full class 5 license. When you come in as a permanent resident, you have the opportunity to switch your license depending on the country that you're from. There are certain countries that may not necessarily, the processes might be different, so you want to check out the website, right? But for me, for example, and most countries, what you do is you can switch your driving license straight to a normal class 5 license. But you have to do two things. First, you have to do the learner's test. You have to pass the learner's test. For the learner's test, you can do any day. You just walk into any of the vehicle registry and you say, hey, I'm here to do a learner's test. When you go in, now when you go in, you will need to show some ID. So you will either need to have your passport or your COPR, right? If you haven't had your provincial ID card with you yet. If you have your provincial ID, then that's all you can use, but you might need to show some documents, proof of address and all those things, and then they allow you to take the test, right? You can take the test once every day and there's no limit. If you fail a day, you can just go and come back another time. So it was 30 questions, and to pass you need to get 25. You cannot get more than 6 wrong. So yeah, you do that and you pass, and then they take away the license that you had from your country, and they send it off, they said, to central driving whatever, and that's where they do the verification. So they verify that you actually had a valid license in your country. So they do the verification, whether they phone your country or whatever, they do that. And then once it's confirmed that it was a valid license, you didn't forge it or do some kind of fishy thing, like it was a valid license, then you're now eligible to now do the road test. But when they take your license away, in the meantime, they give you a class 7, which means you can still drive, but you just cannot drive with any alcohol at all, with no drinking and driving at all when you have a class 7. And you also cannot, there's a period of time you cannot drive for, I believe from 12 midnight to about 5 a.m. in the morning. You're not allowed on the road. And you also, of course, also need to have somebody with a full license with you at all times. So after that period, that takes they say about 2 to 3 weeks. When it's been verified, then you're now eligible to apply for the road test. When you do the road test and you pass, that is when you get your full license. So what you're about to watch is just a mini vlog. When I went in, I'm going to talk a little bit more details about some of the documents that I needed to do. that I needed to bring in order to do the exchange and all of those things, and a little bit of grocery shopping. So welcome again. I am on my way to turn in my license actually. So yesterday I did my driving exam, the knowledge test. I passed first time. I kind of messed up on a couple of questions, but overall it's not too difficult if you've practiced. Apparently you need to have some documents with you. Drop in those documents and then come with your license and everything. So that's what I'm going to do this morning. And there's some stuff that I need to get from the supermarket. So on my way back home, just catching my breath a little. So yeah, completed. I made it to the registry, handed in my St. Lucian driver's license, and filled out, well, they filled out the exemption form. All I had to give them was my ID, and turns out I didn't need to go with my COPR. So if you already have your provincial ID, which interestingly, after I came from the registry last night, the ID came in the mail. So I just went with that and they just used that. So I didn't have to go with the COPR and the passport and all those things. They didn't need it particularly. So just the ID was fine. And then after 2 weeks, after they verified that I actually, had a full license in St. Lucia, then they will approve me to now do the driving test, the actual practical driving test. And when I do that, then I have a non-restrictive full Alberta driving license. So that process, they said, could take anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks. I hope it takes sooner. Our ID card was supposed to take, our Alberta ID card was supposed to take 3 weeks, 21 days, but it pretty much came in 10 days. So hopefully this is going to be faster, but they say I have to go to the office to check with them, and after checking with them and all the verification has been done, then I can go ahead and now book my my practical driving test. So yeah, you join me this morning as I take another cool walk to the vehicle registry. I'm actually coming from there. I went there this morning to try and get my, so here's the timeline. I got my class 7 license in the mail yesterday. So it was around yesterday evening. We were about to leave the house. I checked the mail and my class 7's, the ID card, the actual license came. So what I did was, I was like, okay, today I'm going to check to see if they had done the check already on my license and I'm valid, able to book my road test. So I went there, spoke to the lady, gave her my ID, and she scanned it and she was like, yeah, you're eligible to take the test. So I booked it for today, later this afternoon. They gave me a paper, the receipt and everything for the road test and everything. So yeah, I've been looking up online, just refreshing on some of the practical tips on things that you should be doing, and things to look out for, the things that the examiners will watch out for. Been reading through that as I'm taking my walk, and just trying to be as prepared as possible. So yeah, we're doing that today. So buckle up. I'm getting nervous already. We're doing this afternoon and I'll let you know how it goes. So you join me once again for an update on what's been going on. It's been about 2 weeks to the day since I gave up my St. Lucian license, and I currently hold a class 5 driver's license. From where we left off, you guys just left me just when I had booked my road test and I was about to go do my road test. And so I'll walk you through what happened from that time. But first, just to give you an idea, this is the timeline, right? So I decided to go in to take the knowledge test on a Monday. I did the knowledge test on a Monday. I passed. Then I went in the Tuesday. I gave up my driver's license and did the necessary paperwork and sent that in for verification. And then 1 week later, the Wednesday, I received, I went to check my mail and I received my actual learner's ID card in the mail. This was 1 week later. So they had told me about 21 days, 14 to 21 days to go back and check to see if I was eligible. But since I got my the learner's ID in the mail, I figured I could check. So the next day, the Thursday, I went in to verify if I could do the test. That was the last time we met, and it turns out that I could, and then I actually booked the test. So what happened on that day? The test was scheduled in the afternoon. I went in the afternoon. I did my driving test and I did not pass. I had one error that was an automatic fail. I'll get into the details a little later, but we'll just go through the timeline now. I actually spoke to the driving examiner. We went through the exam. He thought it was very good, except for one thing. I'll let you guys know what it is when we go into the details. So I went in again. I booked my test ticket the second time. So they didn't have anything for the closest date was the Saturday. So I booked my test for Saturday morning, and then on the Friday, I actually ended up doing some more practice. I had a friend of mine. We did some practice runs, went over some of the things. He actually noticed certain things. He pointed out to me, gave me some advice and tips on certain things. And then I went in on the Saturday morning and I did the driving test and I passed. So now what I want to share with you now is the structure of the road test, how it's structured exactly, and then I'll give you some tips at the end of what are the things that I was able to do when I did my little bit of practice session with a friend of mine, and how that helped and all of those things. So the way the test is scored, the road test is scored, is that there are certain errors for the class 5, at least in Alberta. If you make an error, you can get points for that. So you can be marked down by that. So if you accumulate points right up to, for class 5, if you accumulate 75 points, then you fail your test. So what it means is, like, there's room for error, right? You could make a mistake and you could still end up passing your test. However, they do have certain mistakes that are considered automatic fails. Now, I'm going to try as much as possible to be transparent, put as much as I can on the screen, but there will be links to all of the resources that I use to study for my knowledge test, for my practical road test, down in the description box, so make sure you check that out. Right? So there are certain things that is automatic fails, that if you do those things or you make those mistakes, or if the examiner feels threatened or they feel unsafe or any of those things, you can get an automatic fail because of that. So having a knowledge or an idea of what that is helps. So I found a website where all of those things were, which is interesting because when you take the test, after whether you pass or fail, they actually email you these things. With the registry that I did, they actually emailed me the test, actually, that all of these things that was there, they emailed me that. So like everybody literally has those things. I'm surprised I didn't see it around often, but I'll put a link here. And you can see each one of these things that's tested exactly in Alberta, and you can go through it. When I presented for the test, the examiner was very nice. He went through the test. He explained how the test was going to be, some of the things that we were going to do, and then I went in, and when we sat in the vehicle, they checked the vehicle, make sure that it's in proper working condition. They have vehicles available for rent that you could rent in order to take the test. You don't necessarily have to have your own vehicle. So they check the vehicle, make sure it's in good, proper working order and all of those things, and then we go ahead and we do the test. One of the things I expressed to the examiner is that I'm new in town, so to make sure the directions was very clear, because if you tell me make a right on 52nd Street, I might not know what that street is, but that's not exactly how they give the instructions. They're very clear in the instructions. They'll be like, at the second intersection, turn right or turn left, and they'll give you this information. The test itself was not very difficult. As you do the test, you kind of grow into it because you get a little bit, more relaxed and used to the things that you normally do on a day-to-day. So if you have a very good handle on the driving, that tends to help, and you have a very good knowledge base of the things that's expected of you. You know the law and the legalities behind it. You're able to be a little bit more confident in the things that you do. One thing though that can be a bit unsettling, at least it was slightly unsettling for me, is that when you're doing the road test and you're doing everything according to the book, you're driving the speed limit and all of those things, the other drivers, the other road users tend to get a little frustrated around you, because it's like, why is this guy driving the speed limit? Because nobody in real life goes 59 or 58 or 55 on a 60 kilometer per hour road, right? So they will go 63, 65, but you don't really want to afford to do that, because you don't want to be marked down as overspeeding or breaking traffic rules and regulations. When it says maximum is 60, yes, in real life a cop will not pull you over if you're doing 62 on a 60, but when you're doing the exam, you don't want to really push it and test the examiner, right? So sometimes you can notice the impatience of the drivers, and I believe that's actually one of the reasons that actually led me to me failing. I failed the first time because when I was merging into the highway, I actually had to merge into the highway, the Anthony Henday. The speed limit was 100, and there was a driver already on the highway, and he was doing a couple of funny things. I got a little distracted, I must admit, just waiting for him to finish his maneuvers, and my speed dropped a little bit. And so, the examiner failed me because I didn't enter or merge, even though the merging was okay, it was perfect, but the speed with which I merged didn't really match the highway speed of 100 kilometers per hour. So essentially I was going too slow. Yes, you can get booked for going too fast, or if you're going too slow, you can get failed automatically if you're going too slow, because that's considered as obstruction of traffic. So don't think that you're going to just go slowly and you'll pass. Now, like, that's obstruction of traffic. You need to they want to see you to be confident in doing some of this stuff, and it's a little unsettling having to drive and monitor everything that's going on, and at the same time keep a third eye on the speedometer. Most guys tend to not focus on that, and they are caught over speeding. And perhaps for women, perhaps it might be the other way around. They're a little bit too cautious, so they actually go way below the speed limit, and so they tend to fail because of that as well. So yeah, so all of these things. But all in all, when I went in the second time, I felt like I was a little bit more confident, because it was like, hey, I can do this. The examiner said that I was pretty good. So yeah, now let's talk about some of the tips. For the knowledge test, one of the things that really helped was the Alberta Road Guide. Again, there will be a link to it in the description. It has everything that you need to know. I had been reading this booklet from last year since I was in St. Lucia, familiarizing myself with the different road laws, all the rules of the road signs, all of the different things, familiarizing myself with that. Another thing as well that I used to help was practice questions. So there are websites that you could go, that you could practice the knowledge test. There's paid websites. Even those paid websites sometimes have sample questions, so they will have a set of sample tests that you can do for free before you have to pay for others. And there's websites where you can go and you can check out the questions and practice the questions. No affiliations to any of those websites or any of those links, but you can check it out and you can see if it works for you as well. And for the road test, a couple of websites that I found really was useful. All the other things you kind of just repetitive. Was the two that I will drop again I will drop them in the link in the description. Was one link to the Alberta Motor Association, I believe, the AMA. So they had some really good, succinct, summarized things that you needed to know for your driving test, for your road test. And then there was a website that I actually found that somebody had showed the breakdown of the different things, and that was super helpful, actually knowing what to expect, what the examiner is examining and looking for, so you're able to prepare from that and look forward to that. So that was good as well. Again, the link will be in the description. Another tip that I will kind of give is you have to practice driving, especially if you've never driven in Canada before. I will say practice driving. I had a bit of practice because we rented a vehicle for our first week in Canada. If you haven't seen the vlog of our first week in Canada, you can check it out. I also did a video that should be out already about how my rental experience was, renting a vehicle and driving in Canada. So that definitely helped in terms of getting used to the road, getting used to the signs, and just the structure of the city, because every city have, you know, they have a structure, you know, in terms of the way the road network is set up, the traffic light, you know, like all of those nuances, just in terms of like the status quo of how people are used to driving and the things that are expected of you. You combine that with the knowledge you get from the knowledge, the booklet for the Alberta driving and all of those things, and it really helps. So apart from just doing some driving on your own and some practice, somebody who has a lot of experience as an experienced driver and they actually know the rules of driving helping you, that helps a lot. That was what kind of helped me personally, because I did a practice session with a friend of mine. This is somebody that I only met when I came to Canada a couple of weeks ago, and the way this happened, it was, you know, again, it was through sharing on YouTube. Somebody reached out, they knew somebody who knew somebody, and that's how, you know, you make a connection, you do networking, and that person has been a blessing, you know, in my life. So they knew I was going to do the road test, because when I was studying for the road test and doing some revisions, the day before I did the first road test, I was doing some revising in the afternoon and had a couple of questions. So I called him, you know, to sort out certain things, and he was able to explain. So he knew I was doing the road test, so I told him, hey, I didn't pass. He was like, he invited me. He said, hey, come, let's practice how to merge on the highway. Now, personally, I was like, I felt like, okay, I knew how to merge. I'd been driving around, and I felt like one of the reasons that made me fail was not really because I couldn't merge, but because of, you know, what the other driver was doing, because I was a little nervous. But I didn't turn it down, because, you know, in life you never turn those things down, and you always have to be humble and be like open to people teaching you new stuff. And it turns out we went out practicing merging, but then when we were driving, he noticed that, you know, when I was approaching the traffic lights, I will tend to hesitate if the light automatically switches to a yellow. Like I tend to kind of slow down or want to do something, or even if the light is green, but I notice on the side that it's counting down, because you can see on the crosswalk, when the pedestrian crosswalk, when it's counting down to 3, 2, even if the light is green, I kind of sometimes hesitate. And he, you know, he gave me some really good tips on the traffic lights, that hey, don't worry, and, you know, just kind of, you know, guided me through that. And during my test, my second test was actually, in my opinion, was more difficult than the first one. It was the same instructor, but I went through 3 school zones, like just driving around. It was a lot of take a left turn, take a right turn, take a left turn, take a left there. So if you've done the test, you know that every time you're doing those things, it's, you know, signal, you know, shoulder check, move over to the other, signal, shoulder check, move over to the other. You know, you're checking for pedestrians, you're checking for traffic. There was a lot of that. And then when you reach in the school zones, the playground zones, you have to slow down, make sure your speed is at the speed limit of the school zone or the playground zone, not violate that at all, and then, you know, speed up afterwards, you know, to back to normal. So it was a little tricky, and like a couple of times when I was driving, right as I was approaching the light, it changed on me to yellow. You know, if I hadn't had the practice, I probably might have, you know, hesitated, and that might have cost me some points. But yeah, so, you know, you never, you know, like, you know, behave like, you know everything. You know, people can always offer you certain things, even if maybe they tell you 10 things and maybe 9 of them might not be useful or particular to your situation. That one thing that you could learn from them could change things. And this is just important if you're coming in as a newcomer, in terms of how you network with people. You never know how it is that people could help, influence, and all of those things. You just stay humble, you know, and all of those things. So that was something that was good. So if you have that opportunity, definitely take it on. If you don't have a friend or anybody, you could perhaps reach out to some driving schools, maybe pay for 1 or 2 sessions and do that. Do a practice, 1 or 2 practice runs before you take your road test. Now, on the flip side, my advice will also be not to wait too long to do your road test, because like everywhere, every country, every city that you go there, you will end up picking up some bad driving habits. Because I mean, the reality is, like, nobody super follows all of the rules to the letter. Essentially, what happens when you begin to drive with your license from home and you begin to drive after a long time, you spend like a month, you spend 2 months driving around and then constantly driving, you might pick up some bad habits that later on, when you go to do the actual road test, because when you go into the road test, it's like your mind switches into automatic mode, because the examiner doesn't tell you instructions when you have to go straight. So they will tell you turn right, and they'll just sit there. And then you're like, okay, there's traffic pulling up ahead. Do I go to the left? Like, they just sit there and you just make the decisions and you decide if you're going to swing to the left, do a lane change, do what you need to do. And then when you need to make a right turn or a left turn, they will tell you in 2 intersections or in the next major intersection, make a right. That's all. So like, other than that, it's up to you whether you want to change lanes, you know, go to the right, go to the left, overtake a vehicle. That's all up to you. So you cannot switch into automatic mode. So if you have kind of accumulated some habits, it might be a little bit hard trying to get into exam mode. So, you know, my advice might be, you know, you get a little bit of practice, but don't wait too long driving, because you might pick up some habits that might not be favorable for you. It's one of those things that when you come in as a new immigrant and it's like you've been here for, you know, a time and you've managed to get all of these things, it kind of shows that you have all your ducks in a row. And even when it comes to job applications, there are certain employers that would require you to have a vehicle and a valid Canadian Albertan driver's license, and there are some employers that may not have it as a requirement, but they'll say it will be nice if you had it, and you know, it will definitely not hurt your chances of getting a job. And either way, you coming into the country and, you know, settling down and doing all of those things and having all of these things done under your belt actually shows potential employers that this person is somebody that's capable, is somebody that's easily adaptable. They've come into the Canadian society and they easily adapt into all of the things that they need to do, and they get it into the system. So it can never be a negative. So yeah, so I hope this experience helps somebody. One last thing I thought of was, in my case, for example, failing the first test was okay. Don't be afraid to fail the test. Don't be afraid of it. You can have multiple tries at it. When I was at the registry, I was overhearing and meeting people who had done the test like 3, 4, 5 times and they had failed and they were coming back. So if you fail, like, here's the thing. If you go in and you do the test, if you fail, you may have failed the test, but you will have gained the knowledge and experience, because now you know what the test is like, and then you can know what are the things you might need to work on and all of those things. So it's never really failure per se. It's all of it is just kind of helping you to build up to that point where you go and you actually pass. So yeah, that's something else that you can take into consideration. So I hope that this has been helpful, at least my journey. Please check out the official websites and just fact check everything that I've said. I will do that to me, so feel free to do that to me. Feel free to drop some tips in the comments below, and if you're about to do the test, let me know how it goes, and see you around.